Hey, welcome to today's video. I'm talking about product photography. So we're actually here at our humble abode today. I got my laptop, I got most everything set up downstairs. I've got a little temporary photo studio down here that I use for our product photography. We got some Christmas movies, a little fire going, Indy's playing. Hi. Here's my little makeshift studio. I've got two pretty cheap lights from Amazon, a white backdrop, and a bunch of black products today that I got to add to the site before Black Friday. And by the way, I had a really hard time finding a good backdrop and finding the right lights and trying to figure out how to set up my little studio. So if I can help you save some time and figure out a good way to do this, I'm also going to show you how to do some editing. So buckle up. I'm shooting with a Sony a6300 and I'm using a 35 1.8 prime lens. I like to bring my shutter speed down to about 160. I like my aperture to be anything above f5 because I don't want anything to be out of focus when I'm editing in post. And then ISO, whatever it needs to be to bring the light in. I've got it at 640 right now. We'll see. I might have to bring it down. I like to set my timer so that when I push the shutter, it doesn't affect it. So this is the camera I use. You don't have to use one like this. You could obviously get away with shooting with an iPhone or whatever you have. It doesn't have to be this, but I would recommend, if it's possible, to shoot with a camera that has the capability of shooting in raw files. Not so much for the file size, but for the editing capabilities. And I'll show you why. Once I bring it into Lightroom, you have so much more freedom with the exposure and the colors and everything. So it's a major game changer. When I started getting into photography and I realized what shooting in RAW does, it really changed the quality of my work. So I would highly suggest getting a camera that can shoot in RAW. And if you can, learn how to shoot in manual, because for reasons like this, I can set it up exactly how I need to. It's consistent. Every time I come down here to get product photos, I can set it up about the same. So it's worth it. Hey buddy, coming to help Dad? I need your expertise. Just gonna chew on my box for a little bit? Okay. So we talked about my camera. I've actually got it connected to my computer and I'm using Adobe Lightroom. I use it with this app right here. It's called Remote Camera Control. And I basically can control all my camera settings from right here. I can hit the shutter and I'll show you what happens when I hit it. It's gonna take a picture. Oh, it's on a timer. Click. So it just took it there on the camera. You can see that it took, and then when you come down here, it automatically imports it into Lightroom right there. Bing! It's kind of slow. I don't know if that's just because of the cable I'm using, or I don't know. It's just a slow process, but it works really well. Hi, sweetie. I don't know if you've ever shot an entire day on a SD card and then went home to edit it and realized that something was off and it wasn't fixable, and it's incredibly frustrating. So it helps being able to import it right into Lightroom and tweak it, mess with it, and yeah, so that's helped a little bit, but it's not absolutely crucial. Okay, so I got two lights here for my setup. These are both just ones that I bought on Amazon. They're pretty cheap. I'll link them in the description so you can find what to buy. I wouldn't suggest buying the whole kit, the one that comes with the rod and the sheet hanging. I found that I couldn't use a sheet because it was too wrinkly. It was way too hard to get a nice picture out of it right out of the lens, right onto the sensor. So I didn't have to do a bunch of post work in Photoshop. Hey, hi bud. I'm also going to link where I bought this PVC backdrop. I had a really hard time finding one that was big enough so that I could shoot with a whole bag. Wallets aren't so hard. You can find pretty small, pieces of paper and things like that. But I had a really hard time finding this big piece of thick, heavy PVC board. So I'm gonna link that in the description. It's pretty cheap as far as a big backdrop goes. Okay, so I'm just gonna take one of these wallets and show you the process of shooting it, getting it to look good. And then later I'll take you into Lightroom and show you how I edit. That's where the real magic happens. The picture does not look perfect at first, but Lightroom is really where you're able to get a really clean, crisp, pure white backdrop and get it looking really good. So I'll show you how I do that. Let's pick the billfold. Let's do the vertical wallet. We'll do the vertical wallet first, and I'll show you how I do it. Okay, so before I shoot, I like to go back and look at my current photos. Just for reference, these two vertical wallets were shot in different days. So I'm able to get pretty close as far as the angles and lighting and everything goes. So it looks like it's a 3/4 shot and I'm just a little bit above the wallet, so I'm looking down on it just a tad. Which is good because that adds depth to it. If I would have come down just to the face of it so you couldn't see this top angle right here, then the image would have looked really flat and you don't get any dimension. So it's always good to, more like this. It's a really flat picture. But anyway, yeah, so you get a little bit of depth that's more eye-catching. I like this angle because you can see the logo, you see the front of the wallet, you see the interior. It kind of pops out of the image. So that's our hero shot, and then let me go in and just try and remember all the angles and everything we get. Okay, so let's go through and look at these ones. Looks like, let me start from the beginning here. Looks like we got the hero 3/4 shot, that's the profile. We got just a front facing, opened. Got one with my hand in it just for size reference. Another one with my hand in it. We got a 3/4 different angle shot. That one's not super important, but I remember I like this one specifically because it shows the glaze on the leather, shows you the finish. So that one was actually pretty important for that leather. Let's see here, more of a lifestyle shot. I need better ones. I took these really fast. It's funny, that table right there is actually that picnic table outside on my deck. Yeah, you use what you have. It's not fancy, but I just try and get unique shots so that it's not all on white. But over time, I'm gonna try and get some better quality lifestyle shots. Let's pull Lightroom up, my remote camera control, and I gotta get this set up. Let's pull Lightroom up, my remote camera control, and I gotta get this set up. And just so you know, it is a pain trying to get the products to sit where they're supposed to be. Sometimes you have to use clear tape and then go in and clean it up after. There's a lot of little tricks like that you can use. I try not to use anything because I'm not really good with Photoshop. But this wallet specifically is going to be a little harder because it's a stiffer leather. It's one that will soften more over time, but at the beginning it's a little bit stiffer. So it's not going to sit in that same 3/4 angle. I don't know. I'm just gonna have to mess with it for a little bit and we'll see how it goes. Okay, I think we got it pretty close. I'm not too worried about the proportion of it compared to the whole image because I'm just gonna crop and try and match it to this one as close as possible after in post. But I think that's pretty close with the angle. I think we're there. All right, so all the settings are right. I've got Lightroom up. I've got my camera control up. Got my self timer set to 2. I'm gonna hit my shutter. Got 2 seconds. Bring it in here. You have to make sure it's on previous import so that it pulls up the next one. Takes a while. There it is. Okay, so now I can blow this up. I can see all my details are in focus. Okay, so I think that's good. I think we got it. So now I'm just gonna go through and do that same thing for every angle. And I got a helper boy. Hi, bud. You got my phone? What are you doing out there? You helping mom? Want to take some pics? Hey! No, you increased the rating. You gave it 5 stars? Okay, this might seem a little counterproductive, but I just remembered this is how I was doing it. So this first hero shot is the only one that I need this angle and this perspective. So I'm actually going to go through and do every single wallet with this setup because on my next shot, I'm actually going to change the perspective a little bit. On this one, I drop the camera so that I'm looking at the wallet face on because it's actually really hard to get it to stand up without any angle or anything. So I just let the wallet be open, but then I drop my camera down and get right in front of it for that one. So this one I'm going to be shooting from above. I'm going to lay it flat on the table and shoot from above, so I won't even have the tripod for that one. And again, that's not a tripod shot, not a tripod, freehand. So So I need to get this shot for every single wallet, and then I'll go ahead and move my tripod. Alright, so I got all the shots that I need on the tripod for this. So the only thing I have to do now is I'm going to open it up and lay it flat and see if it'll lay flat. If it doesn't, I'm just going to bend it a little bit backwards. I hate doing that to the leather, but for the picture specifically I need it, because if it doesn't lay perfectly flat, then the image looks warped and the perspective is all off. So I like the lines to be straight, clear, just like that. You can see if I can grab a shot of this while taking a picture. Oh man. From now on, anytime you go to our website and you see this picture on this product, you know that it was done on camera. Just like that. By the way, since I'm hand holding it, I changed the shutter speed to 160 just so it doesn't get blurry from my handshake. So I had to pull my aperture down just a little bit, and my ISO is up a little bit higher. So anyway, just remember to do that. If you're going to hand hold it, bring your shutter speed back up so that it's not shaky, or so it's not blurry because of your shaky hand. Alright, so we got this flat lay open shot. Since I was just bending it open, now it's really trying to stay open, so I'm going to crimp the spine back down. And I like this 3/4 shot from the back so that you get the logo, you get some stitching, you get a little bit of dimension. So let me get that shot. I'm not sure if this is the best way to do this. I'm going to need two hands to do this one, but basically I'm just going to do a simple shot like this of me holding the wallet so that I can get so you get a little size perspective, and one like this of it closed. Okay, so I've got all the shots I need of the vertical wallet now. So I'm gonna take this into Lightroom and I'll show you how to get a nice clean white background and how to make the colors look natural. Okay, so I'll see you over there. All right, here we are in Lightroom. So I'm just gonna reset it and I'll do it again for you, but this is what the finished product will look like. Here's what it started out as. Not a huge difference. That's a great way to do it. If you can get a nice, really clean, wrinkle-free white background and you get the lighting right up front in the camera, it makes the post-processing really easy. Before, after, before, after. The only real difference is that the background is just a little bit more gray and you can see some of the shadows, which I actually like the look of the shadows and everything, but I like the background white just so that it's nice and congruent. It just kind of flows in my website. Okay, so let me show you how to do it. Let me hit reset. So there's what we started out with. I'm just going to go ahead and start out with my crop first. I'm going to bring it down. I don't really have a great rhyme or reason for how I crop it, but I do like to keep it consistent with some of my other ones. So here's, for instance, here's a vertical wallet that is already posted on the website. Looks like it just got a little bit of space down here, a little bit up here. Looks like it's weighted a little more to the bottom than the top. So yeah, with that in mind, I'll just make this one pretty close. Maybe there's a real scientific way of creating a template and making sure they're all the same, but I'm not really going to worry about it. I don't think anybody's on my website with a ruler and measuring out the distance and everything. I should hope not. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to weight it a little bit to the bottom. And then one thing that's really important to me is to make sure that the lines are straight. The one that's really important to me are these vertical lines, because that means we have the perspective right. If it looks really off, like some of the other ones I've done in the past, I use a tool right here. It's in the transform tool. It's a kind of a perspective correcting thing. You can hit full right there and it will, okay, it didn't do a whole lot, but you can see the main outside border just kind of twisted and warped. Basically it just corrected the perspective a little bit. So that helps when you're trying to do like a flat lay on the trucker wallets when I'm laying the whole thing out on the table, and it's really hard to make all four sides look really straight because of the warp from the lens that you use. So you hit that button and it'll make everything straight and just look really linear and perspectively good. So, all right, so I think the crop's about right. I'm going to rotate it just a tiny bit just to get more a vertical line right there on the edge, the part that's in focus right here. And I think that's pretty good right there. By the way, I'm fighting a little bit of cold right now, so don't judge me if I sound nasally. I think I had it weighted a little bit too much to the left. So, all right, so that's a good start. So the way I get the background all the way white, this is just one way. There are a million ways to skin a cat in this scenario. Photoshop clipping, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. The easiest way I've found to do it is to use right here the brush tool. Let me highlight it. It's called the adjustment brush, and you can get to it by using K. And you can set your size by scrolling the mouse. If you hold shift and scroll the mouse, it will adjust the feather. Now, one thing you want to do for sure when you're using it for this application especially is make sure auto mask is selected right here. Because that will let you get really close to the edges without letting it flow into the product too much. So especially on an image like this where it's really contrasted, that is a really useful tool right there, auto mask. So I'm just going to get a real big one to start out. I'll click it. And by the way, down here I have show selected mask overlay. That basically is going to show me where I've selected it with a red overlay. I can take that off, but it's kind of nice to see what you've done and what you haven't done. If you get too much onto the product like that, you'll know. So I'm just going to go ahead and get all the really big parts first, and then I'll shrink my brush down and get a little more detailed. Make sure it's nice and solid, especially in the corners and the edges. I like to make sure that it's really covered because that's what shows the most on the product images on my website or your website. You can tell very easily if one of the corners is darkened, it stands out a lot. So, all right, let's see. I'm going to bring my brush down quite a bit right here, feather it out a little, just get right in there. Sometimes I almost just go over like that. Well, that's a little more than I normally would, but if you hold Option, it's going to subtract the mask from that area. So sometimes like in the tough to reach spots like over here, I'll just go ahead and I'll be pretty liberal about putting it in there, and then I'll come back with my erase tool or the remove the mask, and it's a little easier that way. Sometimes, depends on the spot, but all right, I'm actually taking quite a bit longer than I normally do on this one because I'm flapping my gums. All right, that looks pretty good. Get around that corner a little bit. Cool, so I think that's it. I'm just gonna hit done so we can see the finished product. Well, by the way, we've got the mask applied, but we need to make the adjustments to that mask. So I'm gonna click the adjustment brush again, make sure that one is selected that we just did, because I should probably explain as well, you can add multiple brushes. So let's just say I came back, see, here's the brush that I was using before, but it's not selected. So I could do another one and adjust this right here, but I don't want to do that. So make sure the right one is selected, and now I'm going to make the adjustment. Looks like the exposure was already all the way up. That's what I want, so that it's just completely white. And then I also like to desaturate it, just in case there's any hint of yellow or blues, just if the temperature of the photo is just a little saturated. And that pretty much does it. And by the way, I am going to use a second brush on this one because it's a black wallet. The beautiful thing about using editing a black wallet like this is I can desaturate the whole thing, and that way I don't have to fight with the weird tones of blue and purple and green that you don't see them right off the bat, but if you zoom in you start to see some weird colors. One of the things I like to do is come down here and hit remove chromatic aberration. That'll get rid of the really small there will be sometimes blue colors and pixels that are just kind of pop in there, blue, green, yellow, some weird things that aren't supposed to be there. That'll get rid of it. At least I think. These are not the scientific explanation, but just from playing around, that's what I've noticed. And then also enable profile corrections. That gets rid of the warping from your lens that usually happens around the edges. It kind of puts a vignette there So if you hit that, it gets rid of it. Those are usually like 2 default settings I just always have on. So I'm going to add another brush, and this it has to be a second brush because I don't want this one all the way exposed. The only adjustment that I'm going to make right here is to desaturate it. Oh, in fact, I don't have to be very careful about the edges because the desaturation, it doesn't matter if it blends over. I just don't want any of the overexposed brush to blend onto my wall. Okay, so got that pretty good. Right now it's set to be really exposed, so I'm just going to drop it back down to 0 so it'll match the image. And bring the saturation already down. That's already done. Okay, so you can't tell a huge difference. I'm going to toggle it before and after. You really can't tell, but there are some yellow and greenish hues, like on the edge, and in here it gets a little bit greenish. And it looks like on the front you have a little bit of blue. So I'm going to toggle it back, and it just got rid of it and cleaned it up really nice. I wish it was that easy with all of them. Unfortunately, it's not. If you're going to be doing one like this, let me just for example, you really have to play with the hues and the saturation and the luminance a lot. I'll show you. That's the original. That's finished. I sometimes overexpose a little more on purpose. I like the images just to look really bright and vibrant without adding too much saturation or anything. But with this russet color, I tend to mess with the hues a lot. I come in here and I bring it way down to get rid of the yellowness because I like it to seem a little bit more red. Anyway, that was not the correct change. It's already done. But anyway, that's just a tip. If you're doing a lighter color leather, something that's more orangey and yellowy, yellowy, is that a word? Can I use that? Oh well. I would mess with the hues. That was kind of the secret sauce that I eventually started using on my images that finally made them look good. I kept taking pictures over and over on white backdrops, and I just kept thinking, man, I'm just doing something wrong. The color's always off. Even if I messed with the temperature, it seemed to just be off. And my big goal was to make sure that the product looks exactly like the way it does in real life. But sometimes after it's after it's captured onto the sensor and shot back onto the screen, it just doesn't look how it does in real life. And so that was the sauce that really helped me out. I messed with hue and saturation and luminance. So you can see I've got my orange up to 17 on this one, so it really brightens up the orange tones. Anyway, back to our black wallet. Here we go. We desaturated it. The lighting honestly looks pretty good on this. I don't know that I'm going to do a whole lot. I might bring the exposure up just a tiny bit because it's black. I don't want the shadows to hide the lines of the pocket, the kind of silhouette and the shape of the... I don't want it to just be a black blob on the screen. I want to be able to see it. So I'm going to do that. Blacks, might mess with the blacks just a little bit. Maybe bring it down so that I want to be able to see the pockets and the shadows, but I also want the black to look pretty jet black. I don't want it to seem like a cloudy kind of gray color, so bring those down just a little bit. Let's see, I'd like to add a little bit of clarity to most of my photos, like 2 or 3, enough to where you don't notice it right off the bat, but it definitely brings out little details and seems to just make it a little more crisp. Let's see here, what else? I think that's it. It's excuse me. Yeah, it's pretty simple on these black wallets. I really didn't have to do a whole lot, so I think we're good to go. Toggle back and forth. Everything looks good. Oh, I do want to show you one thing. Very magical thing I like to do on a lot of stuff. Like, let's take this bag for instance. What I'm going to show you is the spot removal tool. That is way more handy than you would think. Not just in spot removal, but sometimes I'll basically use it like the clone tool in Photoshop, and I'll get rid of entire things. Like if I have to use a pencil to hold up this top strap handle, or if I have to like prop it. Oh, like as you can see in this. Oh yeah, okay, see, I didn't even notice this one. If I toggle it before and look at the very bottom of the back where my mouse is, there's a little camera battery that I use to prop the back up. Well, if I toggle it after, you can see it's gone. It's because I used the spot removal tool right here. Basically what you do is, let's see if I can do this without resetting. Well, I'll just reset it. Okay, so this image is pretty dark, but let me just show you what you can do with the spot removal. So I'm going to use that. Same thing with the brush size. You can adjust it using shift. You can adjust the feather, or just scrolling you can adjust the size. So let's just take this spot for example. Just click it and it'll draw from over here and it'll blend it with the same texture and surface, or the texture of the surface over here, and it'll just, sorry, not over here, but where it's drawing from the sample. You can also move that around if you don't like where it pulled from, and it blends it just beautifully. All of a sudden that spot's gone, and you can get really picky and do it to the small ones like this. I don't really worry about it too much because I don't want to take away from just the natural characteristics of the leather, but my main goal is to take away things that can be really distracting to the eye. So like this line for instance, I mean, we certainly don't want to lie to our customers and say that your product's not going to have that, but that's a spot right there that immediately draws your eye to it, and it'll just distract you from the photo, or from what the main purpose of the photo, I should say. So you can go crazy on these and just drag it around. I use it like a paintbrush, and I'll just drag a whole line like that, get rid of that whole scar right there, and it looks pretty good. So I've done that with almost every wallet. It seems like you don't really have to do it a whole lot with the black ones because the scars and the scratches just don't really show up. But let's see if we did it on this one. Toggle it. So it looks like over here there were some stray like thread strands that were just kind of hanging around. They just looked really bad. Let me zoom in on that. And if I toggle it, you can see them there. It's just kind of lounging there, just being a real nuisance. And I got rid of it. It doesn't look perfect, especially when you zoom in like that, but you would never notice in a million years if you were just flipping through the photos. So it helps to just clean the images up. So that is a tool that I use all the time on this program. Spot removal, and then this brush, I can clean up my background. Also with the brush, sometimes I'll use it like, just for instance right here on the inside, I'll just apply a brush right here so that I can increase the exposure on that without increasing the exposure over here. So the brush tool is your best friend. That's a beautiful thing. Make sure you crop it and straighten it out. You want to get rid of any distracting marks, anything like that on the wallets. In my case, I forget. You're probably not shooting wallets. Maybe you are. I don't know. This is a leather channel, to be fair. Leather craft channel. So for this one, I used a brush because I needed to desaturate the leather, but I didn't want to desaturate my grommet right here. So I used the brush. Let's see which brush. I'll highlight this one. And my computer's moving slow right now, but it's there. You can see I did everything except the grommet so that the leather just becomes really desaturated and looks uniform and clean, but my grommet still has its brass color. So, all right, so that's it. Leave me messages in the comments, anything, any questions. If you have a tip for me, if there's something I'm doing, there's some gaping hole in my process, I would love to know about it. I'm always up for improving my process, but this is how I do it, and it works really well. We have to do a lot of product shots. Anytime I make something, I basically take a picture of it just so we have it on record, even if I don't put it up on the website. I think I said this before, but I'm going to put the link to my white backdrop and the lights down in the description, so you can set up your own little studio and just get a nice little setup. If you have any questions about Lightroom, let me know. Thanks for watching.